February 1, 2026, inside the electric atmosphere of Rod Laver Arena, became a date that will forever mark the symbolic fall of a tennis empire. On that historic night, Carlos Alcaraz defeated Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open final, delivering a result that few believed possible. For the first time in 11 championship appearances in Melbourne, Djokovic tasted defeat. 10 finals, 10 victories until this moment. At 38 years old, the Serbian legend stood on the podium during the trophy ceremony and spoke with a rare vulnerability, admitting in his own words that he never truly believed he would be standing at a Grand Slam closing ceremony once again. The statement alone sent shockwaves through the tennis world, signaling not just the end of a match, but the possible closing of an era. Yet this was not a story defined by a single mistake, a missed shot, or a brief lapse in form. It was the culmination of shifting momentum, changing generations, and the relentless rise of a 22-year-old challenger who refused to be intimidated by history. Djokovic, the most dominant player the Australian Open has ever known, faced a version of the sport that no longer bent entirely to his will. Alcaraz played with fearless aggression, physical endurance, and tactical intelligence that exposed even the smallest cracks in the armor of a legend. The question of how this defeat happened cannot be answered by one rally or one set. Instead, the truth lies in the collective insight of players, coaches, and analysts who understand that tennis history does not change in an instant, it evolves, one defining night at a time. The first person to explain the defeat was Djokovic himself, and in his post-match interview, the Serbian legend was brutally honest. He admitted that the opening set was one of the best he had played in the last couple of years, but conceded that he was unable to sustain that level. A single costly miss at 4-4 on breakpoint, particularly a forehand he felt he had a clear look at, shifted the balance of the match. His forehand, usually one of the most reliable weapons in tennis history, broke down at the worst possible moments. Djokovic acknowledged that one or two shots can completely alter momentum, and in this final, that is exactly what happened. Despite an incredible start, he remained deeply disappointed with how he felt physically and mentally in the second and third sets. The statistics painted a stark picture of the damage. 46 unforced errors from Djokovic compared to just 27 from Alcaraz, nearly double the count for the most consistent player the sport has ever seen, a number that shocked even seasoned observers. The explanation, however, goes beyond shot selection and statistics, and it begins with a simple number, 16. That is the age gap between these two champions, Djokovic at 38, Alcaraz at 22. Both men had endured punishing 5-set semifinals just 48 hours earlier. Djokovic fought through a grueling 4 hours and 9 minutes against Jannik Sinner, while Alcaraz pushed his body even further, lasting 5 hours and 27 minutes against Alexander Zverev. Yet recovery told a very different story. Djokovic himself acknowledged the biological reality, admitting that it is inevitably easier for a younger player to bounce back. Former champion Marat Safin had predicted this dynamic even before the final began, explaining that when a player is young, ambitious, and experiencing everything for the first time, pressure is easier to embrace rather than fear. Youth, in this context, was not just an advantage, it was the foundation upon which everything that followed was built. What, then, forced those uncharacteristic errors from Djokovic? Cricket legend Sachin Tendulkar, watching closely, pointed to something extraordinary: Carlos Alcaraz's patience. At the Australian Open, it wasn't raw power that stood out most, but composure. In the longer rallies, Alcaraz remained calm, absorbed pressure, and chose his moments with remarkable intelligence. His court coverage, quick, precise, and relentless, was a joy to watch. Tendulkar observed that this was not simply great defense. Alcaraz repeatedly turned defensive positions into attacking opportunities. Balls that would have been outright winners against almost anyone else became set-up shots for devastating counterattacks. Indian cricket star Yuvraj Singh echoed the sentiment, noting that at just 22 years old, playing with that level of belief on the sport's grandest stage is something truly special. Taking down a legend requires more than skill, it requires heart. Faced with this constant resistance, Djokovic was forced to press harder, take bigger risks, and hit closer to the lines, and it was in those razor-thin margins that the errors began to flood in. One witness carried particular symbolic weight: Rafael Nadal, seated in the stands at Rod Laver Arena. The retired Spanish icon had previously held the record as the youngest player to complete the career Grand Slam at 24, and now he watched his compatriot shatter that mark at just 22. After the match, Nadal offered gracious words, congratulating Alcaraz on winning the Australian Open and conquering the career Grand Slam, while also praising Djokovic for reaching yet another Melbourne final and continuing to make history. In that moment, The changing of the guard felt undeniable. The man who once owned the record now applauded its destruction, while Djokovic, Nadal's greatest rival, stood on the opposite side of history, no longer the conqueror, but the conquered. Perspective also came from the man whose name adorns the stadium itself. Rod Laver, an 11-time Grand Slam champion and a living symbol of greatness, praised Alcaraz for his first Australian Open crown, highlighting his talent, courage, and joy for the game, while also saluting Djokovic for what he continues to bring to tennis. Two words stood out in Laver's assessment: courage and joy. Courage to attack a legend on his fortress court, and joy to play freely under immense pressure. These were not empty compliments, but the psychological ingredients that allowed a 22-year-old to dismantle one of the greatest champions the sport has ever known. After losing the first set, something visibly changed in Alcaraz's approach. Former Australian Open champion Lleyton Hewitt had identified this trait even before the final, noting that the bigger the stage and the more important the match, the better Alcaraz seems to play. In the opening set, Alcaraz was reactive, feeling his way into the contest. From the second set onward, he became the aggressor. The tempo lifted, the rallies shortened on his terms, and suddenly Djokovic was the one scrambling. Hewitt added crucial context. When you have already won 6 Grand Slam titles at just 22 years old, you play without the same weight of expectation. This was the inverse pressure dynamic at work. While Djokovic carried the burden of chasing a historic 25th major, Alcaraz competed with freedom, confidence, and clarity. There was no desperation and no fear. Passive Alcaraz lost the first set, but fearless, attacking Alcaraz took control of history. Even in defeat, Djokovic displayed the unmistakable class of a true champion. During the trophy ceremony, he turned toward Carlos Alcaraz with genuine admiration and offered words that carried real weight. He congratulated Alcaraz on an amazing tournament, describing what the young Spaniard had achieved as historic and legendary. Djokovic went further, praising not only Alcaraz's tennis but also his character, calling him a nice young man with good values and a strong family, and acknowledging that at just 22 years old, he was already a legendary tennis player. His final remarks said it all. In Alcaraz's case, everything is possible. Former U.S. Open champion Juan Martín del Potro echoed the same respect, thanking Djokovic for what he has given to the sport and calling him unique, while hailing Alcaraz as a total champion. This was not empty sportsmanship or polite applause, it was one great champion openly recognizing that he had been beaten by a level of tennis he could no longer consistently match. To fully understand the final, however, it is necessary to rewind the clock 48 hours. Djokovic's semi-final against Jannik Sinner was not merely a match. It was a war that lasted 4 hours and 9 minutes. After surviving that brutal battle, Djokovic spoke with defiance and pride, insisting that he never stopped believing in himself and thanking the doubters who, in his words, gave him strength. It was a triumph of will and a powerful statement to his critics, especially against a defending champion who had beaten him 5 straight times. But that victory came at a devastating cost. While the body can often recover in 48 hours, the nervous system cannot. Djokovic had poured everything physically, mentally, and emotionally into defeating Sinner. He won that battle, but by the time he stepped onto the court for the final against Alcaraz, he was already depleted, arriving at the biggest stage with little left in the tank. Behind the physical dominance on display lay something even deeper: mental strength. After the match, Alcaraz revealed the internal battle that fueled his triumph, admitting that few people truly understand how hard he had worked to claim that trophy or how intensely he had chased that moment. Yet even in victory, he acknowledged vulnerability, confessing that his legs were shaking as he served for the title. Champions feel fear too, but what separates them is their ability to act despite it. Rod Laver had identified this quality perfectly, praising Alcaraz's talent, courage, and joy for the game. Alcaraz felt the pressure so intensely that his legs literally trembled, but he executed anyway. He did not need to be fearless, he only needed to be brave enough to move forward in the face of fear, and that courage made all the difference. After the final, Djokovic spoke with an unusual sense of uncertainty about the future. He admitted that no one knows what tomorrow will bring, let alone 6 months or a year from now, calling his career a great ride. He made a crucial distinction between belief and expectation, explaining that while he still believes he can win another Grand Slam, he no longer expects it. Belief, he said, is hope, while expectation is assumption. By lowering his expectations over the past couple of years, he has been able to let go of unnecessary stress. This was not weakness, but a champion coming to terms with reality. At 38, After losing in the semi-finals of all 4 Grand Slams in 2025, Djokovic no longer assumes victory. He still trains to win and still competes to win, but he has released the crushing pressure of needing to win. Whether that represents wisdom or quiet resignation is now the defining question of his career. The numbers underline just how dramatic the shift has been. Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner have now won the last 9 Grand Slam titles between them, stretching back to Djokovic's victory at the 2023 US Open. 9 consecutive majors claimed by 2 players, both under the age of 25. Djokovic acknowledged this new reality with humor, joking that Sinner and Alcaraz will be fighting for the biggest titles while the youngsters like myself try to catch up. He smiled as he said it, but the truth was unmistakable. The era of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic dominating tennis for 2 decades has ended. The Alcaraz-Sinner era has begun, and Djokovic, once the relentless hunter, now finds himself as the elder statesman standing just outside the throne room. Why did Djokovic lose? The reasons are clear. First, age and recovery, 38 versus 22. Biology does not negotiate. Second, tactical adjustment. Alcaraz transformed his approach after the first set, and Djokovic could not counter fast enough. Third, the Sinner cost. The exhausting semi-final drained Djokovic's reserves before the final even began. Fourth, speed and pressure. Alcaraz's extraordinary court coverage forced Djokovic into high-risk tennis, producing 46 unforced errors. Fifth, the mental burden of history versus the freedom of youth. After match point, Alcaraz collapsed to the court in pure joy and later signed the television camera with the words, "Job finished." 4 out of 4 complete. Djokovic summed it up with honesty and grace. He had lost to the world number 1. The king fell because a new king rose, and in Melbourne on February 1, 2026, the coronation was complete.